So, for millennia, humanity has been, well, absolutely obsessed with finding the perfect leader.
Oh, completely. It's like our favorite pastime.
Right. You look back through the grand sweep of history and you see this exact same recurring dream across, like, almost every single culture. We are constantly searching for that one perfect figure.
Yeah, the wise king.
Exactly. A wise king or an honest president or even a compassionate dictator, a philosopher king. Every single generation seems to hold on to this desperate hope that a savior is going to finally appear on the horizon, take the reins, and just magically fix all of our collective problems.
And we argue about it constantly.
Endlessly. We argue over who this person should be, what precise qualities they need, their background, how they should speak. But the mission of today's deep dive is to ask you, the listener, a radically different question.
A really uncomfortable one.
Very. What if we have been searching for the wrong solution entirely? What if our relentless obsession with leadership is actually a dangerous distraction from what actually matters?
It is a profound shift in perspective, for sure. I mean, we spend a staggering amount of energy evaluating the personal qualities of the people at the top, their charisma, their intelligence, their moral fiber, and almost zero energy evaluating the invisible architecture that surrounds them.
Yeah, the structure itself.
Right. And the source material we are looking at today really forces us to confront that blind spot head on.
Exactly. Today, we are diving into a deeply fascinating philosophical dialogue between two thinkers, Nick and Maya. They're exploring this concept they call the time traveler's paradox.
Which is such a cool framing.
It really is. And what they are essentially doing in this text is challenging the very foundation of how we think about governance, society, and, well, human behavior.
Yeah, they're asking us to stop looking so closely at the person in charge and start looking at the structural machinery of the society itself.
Okay, let's unpack this, because they use this brilliant nautical analogy that perfectly captures the futility of our current approach.
Oh, the ship and the captain.
Mm,
It is such a clarifying way to view the problem.
right. So imagine a massive ship out on the ocean, and it has a gaping hole in its foundation.
Just taking on water.
Seawater is pouring in, the lower decks are flooding, the situation is entirely dire. So what do? We change the captain.
Which makes no sense when you say it out loud.
None. We look at the person at the helm, we think, oh, the last captain was terrible, they didn't know what they were doing, let's get a new one.
And sure, if you bring in a highly skilled, incredibly experienced captain, they might delay the disaster.
Right. They might steer the ship a little more carefully around the rough waves or organize the crew to bail water a bit more efficiently. But I was thinking about this logically as I read the dialogue. We spend all of our time, literally all of our societal and political energy, arguing bitterly over who gets to stand at the wheel and wear the captain's hat.
While the boat sinks.
Meanwhile, the water just continues to flood into the hull. The hull is still there. A skilled captain only delays the inevitable sinking. The fundamental problem was never the captain. The problem is the structural integrity of the ship.
And when you map that analogy onto our historical reality, it is just impossible to unsee.
It really is.
Because despite the constant turnover in leadership, the relentless cycle of new elections, new promises, soaring campaign speeches, new political parties taking power, and fresh faces entering the arena, the exact same systemic problems remain entirely entrenched.
It's like a merry-go-round.
Exactly. If you look at the specific persistent issues mentioned in the source material, it paints a very clear picture. We're talking about corruption, poverty, conflict, economic inequality.
Environmental destruction, too.
Yes, environmental destruction and profound societal distrust. Think about those issues. These aren't new problems that just popped up recently.
Right. They've been around forever.
They survive every single election cycle. They outlive every single administration, completely regardless of the ideology of the person in charge.
Which naturally makes you wonder about the mechanics of why they persist. Like, are we really supposed to believe that every single leader in the history of the world was just inherently dishonest or wildly incompetent? That seems statistically impossible.
Surely not. I mean, history is absolutely full of sincere, capable leaders who genuinely wanted to improve the lives of their people. But here is why this matters so deeply to your understanding of history. Leaders are inherently temporary phenomena.
They come and go?
Exactly. No matter how great they are, no matter how much they achieve, they eventually leave. They retire, they lose elections, or they pass away. But systems continue.
The machine keeps running.
Right. The underlying mechanisms that generate poverty or the economic incentives that drive environmental destruction. Those structural rules remain rigidly in place long after the visionary leader has left the stage. If the economic system is mathematically designed to generate inequality, it will continue to do so, totally regardless of who is sitting in the big chair.
But if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking about the issue of accountability. Like, if we just blame the hull of the ship, aren't we giving the captain a free pass?
Yeah, that's a great point. Right.
Like, if a politician is corrupt or a CEO embezzles millions, do we just shrug and say, well, the system made them do it, so we can't hold them responsible? Are we saying extraordinary, visionary individuals don't matter at all?
That is the exact pushback we have to explore, because we are absolutely not removing personal responsibility here.
Okay, good.
Ethical visionary leaders obviously matter, and individuals must be held accountable for their actions. But the core argument here is that good engineering reduces our dependence on exceptional individuals.
Oh, I like that phrasing. Reduces our dependence.
Right. We shouldn't need a superhero with flawless morals just to keep the ship afloat, and we shouldn't have to rely entirely on the personal integrity of a leader to prevent corruption. Accountability shouldn't be a hopeful request. It should be a built-in feature.
A structural requirement.
Exactly. The dialogue we're examining transitions from this problem of the sinking ship to a proposed solution based entirely on institutional design. And they use an airplane analogy to explain how this works in practice.
Let's hear it.
So imagine you are boarding a commercial flight. Would you prefer a brilliant, once-in-generation pilot who is flying an aircraft with serious, well-known design flaws that make it prone to crashing? Or would you prefer a brilliantly designed, highly engineered aircraft that allows even a perfectly average, everyday pilot to operate it safely?
I mean, I am taking the safe aircraft every single time.
Sing.
I don't want to have to rely on my pilot being an absolute genius or having a perfect day just to survive the flight. If they get distracted for 5 seconds, I don't want the plane to fall out of the sky.
Exactly. Because good engineering builds in redundancies. It absorbs human error. It actively guides the operator toward the correct acting.
Like bumpers in bowling.
Yeah. Think about modern aviation. There are literal anti-stall mechanisms built into the software. If a pilot tries to pull the nose of the plane up too high, the system physically resists them to prevent a crash.
Wow, so the system is smarter than the impulse.
Exactly. The ultimate goal of a civilization should be exactly that. Creating systems that consistently encourage ordinary, flawed people to make better decisions. We shouldn't have to wait for a philosopher king. We need to engineer our economic and political institutions so that regular human beings are naturally guided toward pro-social outcomes, just like an anti-stall mechanism guides a pilot.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the text actually lists the specific behavioral flips that a well-designed system should reward.
Yeah, the incentives.
Right now, our systems often reward the exact opposite of what we want. But imagine an institutional design that actively flips the script. The first one they mention is rewarding honesty instead of manipulation.
Which requires looking at how a system actually achieves that. Right now, manipulation often pays off.
Oh, big time.
Energy goes into political spin or corporate PR because obscuring the truth provides a strategic advantage. But how do you engineer honesty? You design a system with radical transparency where hiding information mathematically guarantees a loss of power or capital. You make honesty the path of least resistance.
Right. If the ledger is entirely open, lying becomes functionally useless.
Yeah.
You don't have to trust that the leader is an honest person. The system simply doesn't allow a lie to survive.
Exactly.
The second behavioral flip they mention is rewarding cooperation instead of unnecessary conflict. We see so much engineered conflict because division drives engagement and funding.
Precisely. If a political system awards victory to whoever can polarize the base the most, you will get conflict.
Every time.
But if a system requires consensus building to unlock resources, you suddenly get cooperation. The mechanism dictates the behavior. And this directly ties into the third flip, which is prioritizing long-term thinking instead of short-term gain.
Which is incredibly difficult when you think about how our current world operates. I mean, politicians operate on 2 to 4 year election cycles. CEOs operate on quarterly earnings reports.
It's all so immediate.
Yeah. The incentive is to get a quick win right now, even if it causes a disaster 10 years down the line, like we see with environmental destruction.
Short-term incentives are the enemy of long-term survival. If you want to fix that, you don't just ask leaders to be more forward-thinking.
Because they won't be.
Right, they can't be. You restructure the incentives, you tie long-term ecological health to immediate economic viability. You make it so that the only way to succeed today is to ensure stability for tomorrow.
And the final two flips round this out perfectly, rewarding scientific evidence instead of blind ideology, and rewarding human well-being instead of narrow self-interest.
Those are crucial.
Yeah, if you build an airplane or a society where the controls naturally pull toward those positive behaviors, you don't need a hero in the cockpit. The system itself is doing the heavy lifting.
That's the dream.
But this brings up a really crucial inverse scenario. If systems are truly this powerful, we have to ask what actually happens to a good, well-intentioned leader when they are placed inside a flawed, corrupt system.
This is where the theory gets incredibly grounded in human biology.
Yes, how exactly does a system break down a fundamentally good person? Because we've all seen this narrative play out. The idealistic reformer who gets elected, they want to change the world, and then 5 years later, they're engaging in the exact same shady backroom deals they campaigned against.
It's a tale as old as time.
It is, and the source text introduces this idea of the blank slate theory in the context of leadership. It's this concept that leaders are not born with immutable, fixed leadership traits, but rather they are shaped by the systems they inherit. The system essentially writes the rules of survival onto the leader.
What's fascinating here is the neuroscience behind that adaptation. The dialogue explicitly points out that power literally changes the brain.
Literally, like physically.
Yes, biologically. We tend to use phrases like someone losing their way or becoming corrupted as if it's purely a moral failing. But the text argues it is deeply biological. A corrupt system is a hostile environment, and the brain adapts to survive it. The text details two specific neurological changes. First, mirror neuron activity diminishes.
Okay, and mirror neurons are the biological basis of empathy, right? They are what fire in our brains that allow us to genuinely feel what another person is feeling.
Exactly. When you acquire power within a flawed, highly competitive zero-sum system, you are constantly forced to make high-stakes decisions that often harm others to protect your own position.
Right, it's dog eat dog.
Right. And if you felt deep empathy every time you made one of those decisions, you'd be functionally paralyzed. You couldn't do the job. So your brain physically adapts. It downregulates those mirror neurons. You biologically lose your capacity for empathy because the system demands ruthlessness for survival.
That is, I mean, it's almost like developing emotional calluses. Like, if you work with your hands all day, your skin gets hard to protect you from the friction.
Yeah.
So if you operate in a system that punishes empathy, your neurological hardware for empathy literally shrinks to protect you from the psychological friction.
That is a perfect analogy. And the second change happens in the dopamine system. In these environments, the brain's reward center becomes highly sensitized to status and dominance.
So you start craving it.
Exactly. So, on one hand, your biological capacity to care about others is dropping, and on the other hand, your chemical craving for status, control, and power is spiking. This proves that a leader doesn't just wake up one morning, look in the mirror, and decide to be corrupt.
It's not a choice.
No. The corruption emerges gradually, neurologically, because the system continuously rewards certain aggressive or manipulative behaviors with hits of dopamine while punishing vulnerability or cooperation.
So it really isn't just a moral test. Place a good person in a corrupt system, and their integrity is being tested chemically, neurologically, every single minute of every single day.
It's an exhausting fight.
They are actively fighting against their own brain chemistry, which is being forcefully reshaped by the incentives around them. But the flip side is also true, right?
Yes.
If you place an ordinary, flawed person in a well-engineered system that rewards honesty, honesty becomes the path of least resistance. It becomes the easier, more biologically rewarding path.
Exactly. The system dictates the behavior. The system begins reshaping the leader instead of the leader reshaping the system.
Okay, if the brain is actually rewiring itself to fit the system, then all of our political theater is totally backwards. So what does this all mean for how we actually evaluate the world around us?
We have to completely change our lens.
Right, because if neuroscience and history both prove definitively that systems drive behavior, why do we constantly fixate on personalities? Why is society so entirely blind to this?
That's wild, isn't it?
It is. We spend months, sometimes years, fiercely debating the character of one politician versus another, dissecting their speeches, analyzing their personal flaws, while completely ignoring the incentive structures they are operating within.
Well, the text points to a huge blind spot in how we are raised and educated, which really explains this disconnect.
Yeah.
It absolutely comes down to what we are trained to see and what we are systematically trained to ignore.
What do you mean?
We don't have a societal vocabulary for systems, so we fall back on the only vocabulary we do have, personalities.
Ah. Think about the standard educational path. Children spend years and years in school. They learn complex mathematics. They learn intricate grammatical rules for languages.
Science, history.
Yeah, they study hard sciences, history, technology, all of which are incredibly important.
Right.
But look at what is fundamentally missing from that curriculum.
The missing elements are glaring when you realize they aren't there. Students are almost never taught how civilizations actually function at a structural level. They aren't taught the mechanics of how incentives shape human behavior. They don't learn how the human brain responds to artificial scarcity or the specific conditions required for cooperation to emerge in a group.
Which is basically the instruction manual for society.
Exactly. They aren't taught how trust is built on a societal level or, crucially, how systems succeed and how they quietly structurally fail.
Because we lack that education, we default to pointing fingers at individuals. I mean, it's cognitively so much easier to praise a charismatic leader when the economy is booming and blame a different leader when things go poorly.
It's a mental shortcut.
Right. And the whole time, the deeper structural machinery of the society, the actual engine driving the outcomes, remains almost completely untouched and unexamined. We are essentially scientifically illiterate when it comes to the complex systems that actually govern our daily lives.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes clear that civilizations must evolve beyond this primitive personality cult. A society that wants to endure must become larger than any individual leader. It has to be larger than any political party and larger than any rigid ideology.
It has to operate more like the scientific method itself.
Precisely. Science is inherently a self-correcting system.
Yeah.
When new evidence appears that contradicts an old model, science updates its understanding.
It doesn't just stick to the old model out of loyalty.
Right. It doesn't cling to a mathematically flawed theory just because a highly charismatic scientist proposed it. The mechanism of science relies on the process, not the person. Civilization needs to adopt that exact same self-correcting mechanism.
That makes so much sense.
This raises an important question, though. Shouldn't civilization have the courage to update its own foundational design when the historical and biological evidence shows the current design is failing?
You would hope so.
The long-term future of humanity doesn't depend on finally discovering the perfect, flawless leader. It depends on finally doing the hard work of designing systems that naturally bring out the best in ordinary, imperfect human beings.
This has been such a paradigm-shifting deep dive, and for you listening, the core takeaway is really about resilience. A resilient future depends entirely on wisdom being built into our institutions, not on a fragile reliance on heroes.
Heroes are unpredictable.
Exactly. When a civilization depends on heroes to save it, its future is always going to be completely uncertain. But when the system itself is structurally wise, ordinary people can thrive safely within it. And this text leaves us with a truly haunting question to reflect on.
Oh, this part really got to me.
Think of the leaders you have deeply admired throughout your life. Did they succeed because of the system they were in, or did they succeed despite it? The source poses this exact scenario. If you place the most honest person you know into a system that rewards dishonesty, how long would their integrity last, and what does that say about the system, not about them?
It's a profound thought experiment. And I want to leave you with one final idea to mull over on your own as you go about your day. We've talked a lot about world leaders, massive civilizations, and macroeconomics today.
Big picture stuff.
Right, big picture. But if systemic incentives are so incredibly powerful that they can literally rewire the brain chemistry of world leaders, forcefully stripping away their empathy over time, how are the miniature systems in your own everyday life quietly rewiring your brain and behavior right now?
Oh, wow.
Think about the specific structure of your workplace. Think about the algorithmic design of your social media feeds. Think about the unwritten social rules of your friend groups. These are all intricately designed systems with their own powerful incentives.
That's a terrifying thought.
Are they rewarding honesty or manipulation? Are they rewarding deep, long-term thinking or cheap, short-term validation? Are you the pilot of your own life, making free choices? Or are you just the airplane, blindly following the invisible design of the systems around you?
So the next time you find yourself frustrated, wishing for a better captain to magically save the day, take a look down at the floorboards. You might just find you're standing on a ship that was structurally built to sink.